Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Fox News host Jesse Watters just obliterated a conservative talking point about the assassination of a health insurance CEO. And Watters is so out of touch, he didn't realize the problem until a colleague shamed him. We will show you that in a moment. First, here's some context. Conservatives have been blasting progressives for expressing understanding of Luigi Mangione over his alleged shooting of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. On the Fox News show The Five, even the panel Democrat Harold Ford condemned people who support the alleged vigilante justice.
We live in a really, really perverse and dangerous and awful place when people are willing to say the things that people are saying online. And then for this person at the Washington, I don't know which, the Taylor Lorenz, celebrating CEOs. Because what kind of society do we live in? I can understand you disagreeing with a company's policies, but that doesn't mean that you have the right, that anyone has the right to go and kill somebody.
That is the key Fox News talking point. Nobody has the right to take matters into their own hands and just kill somebody. Ford went on to say that Luigi Mangione's punishment, for example, should come after a trial and in accordance with the law. And Ford supports the ultimate punishment.
Now, this young guy right here, if indeed he's the person, and they prosecute him, I hope he gets a death penalty. I hope he's prosecuted to the fullest extent.
We don't have the death penalty in New York.
Well, maybe you can get him to get in there. You and Trump can figure something out.
I did it the first time in New York.
And yes, that was Jeanine Pirro telling Ford that under New York law, there is no death penalty. And there was nothing that Pirro, when she was a New York judge, could do to change it. And that brings us to Jesse Watters. Remember, the conservative talking point we've heard right here is that nobody should take justice into their own hands. But Watters seemed to let it slip that he's okay with vigilante justice as long as it's the people Watters doesn't like who are being murdered. Watch.
This guy's not ready. He's way too soft. He's going to get annihilated on the inside, and good. If he's not going to get the death penalty, maybe someone will do him justice behind bars. That's all I have to say about that.
You should stop there.
Right? People say that a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
And at that moment, Jesse Watters seemed to realize he had gone too far. Because in that one utterance that Mangione should be whacked in prison, Jesse Watters supported the very concept of vigilante justice that conservatives have been complaining about here. And Watters underscored the conservative hypocrisy. Because when it's a corporate CEO whose company profits off of people's health challenges and misery, anything extrajudicial against that CEO, according to conservatives, is horribly wrong. But when it's somebody who acts on behalf of people denied health coverage claims, well, it's fine to mete out extrajudicial punishment against that person or Luigi Mangione. And even better, says Watters, if it comes in a prison shanking. Because heaven forbid our prison system should actually be a safe space for inmates as our system strives. I have been putting off weighing in on the killing of United CEO Brian Thompson. In my view, his murder should be condemned, full stop. But I also believe we can condemn vigilante justice while at the same time examine our for-profit health insurance system. It's not a binary choice in terms of one or the other. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, oh, it's too soon since Thompson's death. This is inappropriate and callous. Well, spare me the lectures on callousness, because on the very day that Thompson died, UnitedHealthcare's stock price rose 0.9%. Reportedly as investors reacted favorably to the company's new earnings outlook. That same day, Morningstar reported that investors should know that UnitedHealth's management bench is typically quite deep. We expect the company to smoothly transition Thompson's role to an internal candidate. So as Thompson's body was still warm, investors wanted reassurance. Another capitalist tool was ready to pick up the banner from their fallen champion in the name of money. So spare us the lectures about the lack of regard for human life. It is a fact, by their own filings, that UnitedHealth denies approximately 35% of all insurance claims. That is nearly twice the industry average. And one of the reasons this story has been resonating so widely is that nearly every American knows somebody who has been denied coverage for a procedure or drug because an insurance company thought it was too expensive or it was out of network. Relatedly, more than 100 million Americans are today carrying medical debt. And in case we need any reminders, the United States is the only industrialized nation on the planet to treat healthcare as a privilege and not a right. All other industrialized nations have a form of universal coverage. In the United States, not only do we pay more than everybody else for medical care, we also have worse outcomes than most other countries. So it is long past time to have a discussion about our for-profit healthcare system. Many conservatives hit back at Medicare for All proposals by saying, I don't want to pay for other people's healthcare. I like private insurance. The irony, of course, is that with private insurance, you still pay for other people's health care, but you also pay for the salaries of middlemen and middlewomen whose entire purpose is telling a large number of people no to many medicines and procedures so that the middlemen and middlewomen and their companies can make money and maintain profits. Our health coverage system is revolting and corrupt. Relatedly, polls show that more than 65% of all Americans, including a majority of Republicans, support changing it to universal coverage like Medicare for all. But our politics is also revolting and corrupt. Health insurance companies, through their campaign donations, control both major U.S. political parties. And the power of the health insurance corporations is stronger politically than the power of ordinary Americans. So these days, we only get minor changes in our for-profit health insurance system. And in all likelihood, under a Republican Congress and Republican White House and administration, the coming changes will roll back parts of the Affordable Care Act known as Obamacare. And millions of Americans who currently have coverage under the ACA will lose coverage. So the anger and frustration out there is understandable. It's also undeniable. But that takes us back to the concept of vigilante justice. In 1988, Democratic presidential nominee Mike Dukakis, the governor of Massachusetts, lost the presidential election to Republican George H.W. Bush. By most accounts, Dukakis lost because of a single exchange at one of the debates. Dukakis opposed the death penalty and came across as a robotic bureaucrat when asked a question about the death penalty by CNN's Bernie Shaw, and he posed the question in terms of Mike Dukakis' wife.
Governor, if Kitty Dukakis were raped and murdered, would you favor an irrevocable death penalty for the killer?
No, I don't, Bernard, and I think you know that I've opposed the death penalty during all of my life. I don't see any evidence that it's a deterrent, and I think there are better and more effective ways to deal with violent crime. We've done so in my own state, and it's one of the reasons why we have had the biggest drop in crime of any industrial state in America, why we have the lowest murder rate of any industrial state in America.
The answer Dukakis should have given was something like this. I would be infuriated and I would be outraged and I would want to strangle my wife's murderer with my bare hands. Any person would feel that way. But our system of justice breaks down when we start taking matters into our own hands instead of letting the courts, judges, and juries decide these issues. Showing emotion would have helped Governor Dukakis. Instead, his cold, technocratic answer, while perhaps correct on the merits, suggested that he did not have an emotional pulse. That middle ground is where all Americans should be now regarding the death of Brian Thompson. All of us should feel outraged and infuriated over our for-profit healthcare system, and our anger towards corporations like UnitedHealth and their leaders like Brian Thompson may cause us to fantasize or dream about taking violent action. But the moment we actually act on our violent fantasies and impulses and we become vigilantes, we undermine the entire system of justice that the United States depends on. So the correct response to the Brian Thompson killing, and also the correct response when it comes to other health insurance CEOs, is this. Protest, interrupt, demonstrate outside their shareholder meetings, urge Congress to change the system, fight like hell to change it, and to cut down on the political power that health insurance companies wield over our elected leaders. And yes, be frustrated and angry when things don't change. But crossing over into violence and taking action ourselves is wrong. It was wrong when Luigi Mangione allegedly did it. It would be wrong if some prisoner did it to Mangione as Jesse Waters wants. The moral answer, the ethical answer, is to acknowledge our emotions and anger, but reinforce that our system of justice needs to be paramount. I get that the complexity and nuance of all of this may be too much for Jesse Waters and countless other conservatives. Hypocrisy and shallow thinking doesn't seem to stop them. But all of us need to stop and ask ourselves, what kind of society do we want to live in? Should it be a society where we feel things very strongly? Of course, we should be able to feel emotions and feel like we're just on the verge of doing something. But acting on our feelings, crossing over, taking matters into our own hands, and trampling on our justice system should be condemned. It must be condemned. By the way, President-elect Donald Trump just got publicly gashed by his own niece.
Let's be very clear here. It's despicable. Also, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think that's the first time he's ever heard any part of the Constitution in his life. He's a deeply ignorant, cruel man who seems to forget that his father was a first-generation American. So if it hadn't been for birthright citizenship, my grandfather probably wouldn't have been allowed to stay here.
Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Vanessa, who wrote, "I love Mary Trump. She is so honest and forthright in her warnings about Trump and the truth of his character." Indeed. I look forward to reading your comments about Fox host Jesse Watters undercutting his own channel's talking points, being the last to realize it, and getting humiliated by Jeanine Pirro, of all people. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.